This tutorial shows how to add information to dives that have been downloaded from a dive computer. After download, the new dives in the dive list are nondescript. Each dive has a date, time and depth, but the dive site is given as unnamed dive site. In addition, the trip header only gives a month and a year, in this case February 2020, with 6 dives during that trip. For the dive log to be useful, we would like to add information that helps us to locate specific dives that we wish to view at a later date. Obviously, the information that you provide here is optional and should be tailored to meet your specific needs. Let us start with the trip header. Long press on the trip header until a context menu appears. Tap the option Edit Trip Details, bringing up a panel where one can specify the dive site name. In this case, we describe a 6-dive trip to a mythical wreck on the east coast of Australia. Type the name of the wreck as the trip location. For reef dives, one would probably type the name of the reef. You can also provide notes that describe this dive site. Provide any information that you might want to reference at a later date. In our example, we provide a very short overview of the wreck. To save this information, tap the blue Save button with a removable disk icon visible at the bottom of the screen. If you do not want to keep the information, tap the grey icon to the right of the Save button. We are returned to the dive list. The trip header now shows the name of the wreck as the trip location. This already looks much better. Now we need to edit the information for each individual dive during the trip. Let us edit the first dive of the trip, the one at the bottom of the list. Tap on this dive. This brings up a screen showing the existing information about the dive, including the dive profile obtained from the dive computer. To edit this information, tap the blue button with a pencil icon visible at the bottom of the screen. This opens a panel with many fields that can be edited. Obviously, all fields are optional and you only enter information that suits your particular needs. Let us start at the top of the panel where we can edit the dive number. Usually, the dive number follows sequentially from previous dive trips and it does not need editing. However, in this case, we need to correct the dive number. Type in the correct dive number. An important point to notice here is that a change in the contents of a field is not saved unless it is followed by selecting a different field on the screen. Selecting a different field tells the software, "Okay, I'm done editing this specific item." Next, we may wish to add the dive site. If this specific dive site has been used before, simply select it from the drop-down list. If this is a new dive site, type in the name. In this case, we dived a new dive site, the saloon and the bridge of the wreck. If the dive site has been used in previous dives and has been selected from the drop-down list, the geographical coordinates are shown automatically. Otherwise, specify their coordinates. Surprisingly, the degree, minutes and seconds symbols all appear in the Android keyboard and are used to specify these coordinates. Take care to do this accurately since it is not easy to type in this information. The dive depth and dive duration are provided by the dive computer. Usually, we do not know the air temperature unless provided by the dive computer. Most dive computers provide the water temperature. Next, we may wish to specify the type of dive suit used. Select this from the drop-down list. If your suit has not been used in previous dives, type it into the text field. The same applies to providing the names of your dive buddy and that of the dive master during the dive. If they have been recorded in previous dives, select them from the drop-down list. Otherwise, type the appropriate name into the text field provided. The weights used during the dive is often recorded because it is useful to look up in the dive log before going on a dive trip. In this case, we use 6 kilograms. We need to scroll down to get to the bottom part of the screen. Many divers record the air or gas pressures in one or more cylinders during a dive. Firstly, we need to select the type of cylinder used. There is a drop-down list for selecting the cylinder type. If it is not on the list, type the name in the text area provided. In this case, we dived with a single aluminium AL80 cylinder and we select it from the drop-down list. Provide the type of gas used during the dive. In this case, it was nitrox, but frequently it would be air. Next, we need to provide the start and end pressures of the cylinder during this dive. Further down the screen, we can provide 2 ratings. These are scores out of 5. Tap the plus symbol to increase the score and the minus symbol to decrease the score. Lastly, you may add any notes that describe what was seen or experienced during the dive. Tap the Save button to save the information. If you do not wish to save the new information, select the grey button on the right of the Save button. You are returned to the dive screen, showing all the information you have just entered. Above the dive profile image is the dive site name, as well as the date, time, depth and duration of the dive. The correct dive number is also shown. On the left of the Save button is the map icon. Tap on the map icon to see the dive site of this specific dive on a map. Return to the dive panel by tapping the Android back key. If you are satisfied with the information, tap the Android back key a second time. This returns you to the dive list. Information for the first dive of the trip has just been completed. Initially, it may seem to take a long time to deal with one dive. However, you will quickly get the hang of it and perform the task quite rapidly. The important thing is to enter information that is useful for you, the diver, so that the dive log remains a useful tool for saving and extracting information about your dives. The screenshot above shows what the dive log may look like after all the dives for this trip have been dealt with. This brings us to the end of this tutorial.